Welcome back, guys, to Ace Attorney Investigations 2, Prosecutors Gambit, where last episode, after connecting some logical dots to further understand some movements during the IS-7 incident, we moved on to a game of mind chess against Gusto, discovering his need for the ultimate cookbook to be the taste disorder he was suffering, debilitating for him and his line of work. We now take testimony about his entry for the final as we work on proving motive due to the breakdown in relations between him and Frost at the competition's finale. Frost and I were working together right up through the semi-final. I handled the flavor, he did the designing.
Hold it!
Frost was in charge of designing the work you both submitted while you handled the taste. Yeah, he was a sculptor, craftsman, and his sense of design was second to none. But he was clueless about confectionery, which is where I came in. We each did what the other couldn't. And boy, did you not have an eye for aesthetics. Not even for the simple stuff. You better now? Oh, how'd you like me now? The national symbol of Zengfar. Oh yeah, it's a phoenix. That's awesome. I'll say, pretty different to the stuff you were pumping out 18 years ago. But all the fruits of my training. I've dedicated my whole life to my craft. But back then, we both needed each other's help, so we joined hands until the final. But I wanted to face Tangaroa in the final on my own. No help, just me and my skills. You were serious about winning the title then? Of course! The art of confectionery is my life. Why wouldn't I have wanted to be crowned the greatest? But I still had a lot to learn back then. Guess it's no surprise my work wasn't up to scratch. But the title wasn't the only thing you wanted. There was the cookbook too. And you wanted the book even more than you wanted the title. Isn't that right, Mr. Gusto?
Overruled.
Mr. Edgeworth, you are badgering a witness who is still suffering the effects of today's attack. I cannot allow this harassment to continue. I understand, Your Honor, but... Ignore him, Mr. Gusto. You need not answer that vile prosecutor's question. But please, do continue your testimony in your own time. So I helped Frost with his entry, but mine, I did alone.
Hold it!
So you're saying Mr. Frost didn't help you at all? But he'd helped you up until then, correct? It's a bit strange for him to stop so late in the contest, no? Strange or not, it's the truth. Could be he had his reasons too, I wouldn't know. If he's lying, it's going to be a headache to prove. 18 years is a long time. Not unless that gizmo of yours is a built-in lie detector, Kay. If it did, I'd have stolen the show from Mr. Edgeworth long before now. Don't worry, Fender. I can tell when he's lying. No doohickeys assistance required. Please, Mr. Gusto, continue your testimony. If it didn't taste good in the final, that's on me. What can I say? I lack training.
Hold it!
Oh, it's more about your issues. And yet I heard that your creations prior to the final were scored highly for their flavor. So what went wrong? Was there some kind of cooking accident on that day? No, nothing like that. It was... I told you I had a taste disorder. My sense of taste failed me. It's as simple as that. But Mr. Frost's entry was complimented on its flavor. Your sense of taste hadn't failed you then. Did something happen overnight? I don't think he's going to spill any more beans, Mr. Edgeworth. Then perhaps I should ask him about something else. Ask about the semi-final, ask about Mr. Frost, or stay the course? I mean, ask about the difference, really. Did something change between the semi-final and the final, Mr. Gusto? Not really. The only difference between the semi-final and the final was that Frost wasn't helping me.
Hold it!
So you really completed your final entry without Mr. Frost's help? I may not have had his designs to lean on, but I knew I was still solid when it came to flavor. So the visuals were the only thing that changed between the semi-final and the final. You sure, Gusty, old pal? Gonna have to call you out on that one, I'm afraid. Wasn't just its looks that got a big thumbs down come judgment time. Got trashed on flavor, too. Doesn't sound much like a winner to me. Despite his confidence, Mr. Gusto failed on flavor, too. The lack of Mr. Frost's assistance shouldn't have affected that. So was there some other difference? An 18-year-old mystery. And the key to unraveling it is finally in my grasp. I just need to remember everything Fender told me about what he and my father discovered. So it's most likely going to be the extra statement we got. I think it's in the matter of taste testing. But I think there was another difference, to be fair. I don't think we're going to get any information from here that is related. There's not going to be all that much actually related to him and the current line that we're going down. But it's taste testing. He had a taste tester. Here we go. A photo of Frost, Gusto, and their sons. Gusto's son visits his father daily up through the semi-final. So it might not have been Frost that was taste testing. I remembered that his son wasn't there on the final. It probably might have been that his son was taste testing for him.
Objection!
I can think of one significant difference between the semi-final and the final, Mr. Gusto. Your son. This is him in the photograph, correct? You told me he was here with you up through the semi-final.
He was... What of it?
What indeed? He was here with you until the semi-final, until he suddenly wasn't for the final. And just as suddenly, your work went from being lauded for its flavor to being lambasted for it. I don't think that's a coincidence, do you? He wasn't just spending quality time with his father, he was playing a much more pivotal role than that.
I just wanted to see me hard at work, to show him I was trying my best for us.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe it was him being here that helped me do so well in those early rounds.
He talks a good game, but nothing about this guy screams super dad to me. Indeed. Thankfully, we would only have to give such an idea credence if his story were true. After all, how much could the encouragement of one small boy affect the taste of a grown man's work? Mr. Gusto prided himself on the flavor of his creations, but then he lost a sense of taste. He must have had a tough time maintaining his high standards after such a devastating loss, unless... I'm sure your son was here to cheer you on, but that wasn't all he was here to do, was it?
You're a very suspicious man, Mr. Prosecutor. Why not try answering yourself for a change? What was an elementary school kid doing here other than to support his father?
He was taste testing. Your son knew the taste of your work pretty well, I imagine, Mr. Gusto.
He was my biggest fan, of course he knew it.
In which case, he would have been a good judge of whether something tasted on brand, so to speak, no?
What are you implying?
You've already told us that you were suffering from a taste disorder.
I'll admit it. You're good. I never told anybody any of this, but you figured it all out anyway. It's true. 18 years ago, I developed agnosia.
No one knew about your condition. Indeed, I doubt Mr. Frost would have wanted to continue collaborating with you had he found out. After all, it was your job to make sure his creations tasted good. Therefore, your son wasn't just here to support you. He was helping you by taste testing your work.
Dang, now it all makes sense.
Frost's stuff tasted good because it really was finished the day before when the kid was still here.
You have a vivid imagination, Mr. Prosecutor. But you seriously think I'd trust a kid to tell me how to adjust the taste of my masterpieces? I had some pride, you know, even back then. Did you now? My designs may not have been much to write home about back then, but I always knew my work tasted better than anybody else's. You think I'd risk everything by putting my reputation in the hands of a child? This is just more speculation. That's all it is.
In that case, I asked to speak with your son this instant, and see how much of your story he can corroborate.
Sadly for you, my son is no longer my concern. What? As soon as I got my sense of taste back, I went straight to Zhengfa to start my training and cut off all ties with the kid for good.
What? You abandoned your own child?
And that ain't the half of it. No one knows where he is, even now.
Ooh.
Cops have looked all over for him, but no dice. So, still think you can prove your asinine theory? I'd like to see you try. Think I care about anything besides confectionery? Think again! I got my sense of taste back. What need do I have for a son?
Silence in the courtroom. While Mr. Gusto's words and actions may demonstrate a certain lack of humanity on his part, the goddess of justice cannot judge him for that.
Therefore, Mr. Edgeworth, I believe it is time for you to admit defeat.
Yeah, give it up. 18 years is a long time for anything to serve as now, proof or otherwise.
Mr. Edgeworth, we have to do something. If we don't, the truth might be lost forever.
Where are you, Detective Gumshoe? Can't imagine whose blood it could possibly be, but I'll get it tested right away, sir.
Please do, Detective. That's the last piece of the puzzle, I'm sure of it. Once we know whose blood it is. Hey, Miles. Sorry to cut in on your mind palace time, but I was pondering something myself. Our friend Gusto didn't come here just to check up on the body, did he? You mean because he tried to open the case? Exactamundo. Think we have anything that might explain why he tried to do that? We might, if Detective Gumshoe can make it back in time with a certain piece of evidence.
That's quite enough idle chatter, Defense. Now, if you...
Mr. Edgeworth, sir! Sorry to keep you waiting.
Yeah, speak of the devil. I take it you have the test results, Detective.
Yes, sir! The lab just got back to me.
Detective, please, court is in session. Now then, am I right to assume that you are bringing us the evidence Mr. Edgeworth was just speaking of?
What? Hey, no fair! Why didn't anybody tell me about any of this? It is indeed the evidence in question, Your Honor. It needed testing, so I asked him to carry it out. What the? Why is everybody always helping you? I'm supposed to be the one in charge here? Mr. Winner, I'm sorry I didn't involve you, but this is important. Can we at least hear what the detective has to say? Well, alright. So, Detective Gumshoe, what did the test have to tell us?
You're not going to believe this, but the owner of the blood we found in the liquid at the bottom of the Gemini case is Carmelo Gusto, the victim of the poison gas attack. What are you talking about?
Thank you, Detective. You've been very helpful. Well, it looks like my suspicions were correct.
What do you mean, Mr. Edgeworth? Yes, what do you mean? Explain yourself. What is the significance of this blood to this case?
It's only the very thing the perpetrator of the IS-7 incident has been trying to hide all these years.
The
fact that your blood was found inside the Gemini case, Mr. Gusto, is as good as us finding your blood lying right next to Mr. Frost's body.
Overruled. Why would there be traces of your blood there, of all places, Mr. Gusto?
If you won't answer Her Honor, Mr. Gusto, then I will. There wasn't just blood in the liquid from the Gemini case, there were traces of salt and sugar too.
There were?
And if you remember, one particular part of Mr. Frost's work was allegedly very salty indeed. Oh yeah, you're talking about what Delisha told us back then, right? What was it again?
Did they ever? I've never tried ices so scrumptious in all my life.
Really? Man, I wish I could have had a bite.
Well, scrumptious except for the salty bit, of course. That was unbearable.
The salty bit?
It's in the other photo you've got there. This bit, the harpy thing.
Gemini's lyre. Yes, the lyre, and only the lyre, tasted as if it had been flavored with salt. There were no traces of salt anywhere else in Mr. Frost's entry.
Very interesting. Then perhaps you can tell us, Mr. Edgeworth, where did the salt on the lyre come from?
I guess, considering it's a salt lamp.
Take that! This is the lamp from the IS-7 incident.
Indeed, I believe that the salt that gave the lyre its flavor came from such a lamp. Mr. Von Comrade established that both salt lamps were in Mr. Tangro's room at the time of the crime. One of them was used to kill Mr. Frost. And it was stained with his blood. But no corresponding pool of blood was found in Mr. Tangro's room. Right, because the culprit had chucked a piece of chocolate with that on it into the little stream. Furthermore, aside from the lyre, no traces of salt were found anywhere else in Mr. Frost's room either. Hey, come to think of it, the lamps we found in Delisha's room were both broken. The lamps appear to be broken. Bulbs are smashed. Both of them, yeah. Maybe they fell and broke on the floor. We never did figure out the one that wasn't used to kill Frost got busted, but Are we thinking maybe it had Gusto's blood on it at some point? Anyone whose blood was found on one of the lamps would have been a person of interest to the police, so the killer needed to hide the blood somehow, and in a way that wouldn't arouse suspicion.
And you are seriously suggesting that the lyre was used to do just that?
I am. I suspect that the bloody salt was somehow applied to the lyre so that it could be hidden inside the case. Because unlike the fountain water, the sculptures would have needed more time and care to test properly. And so he waited and waited for his chance to dispose of the lyre undetected.
Then the reason he's here today is...
18 years ago, Mr. Frost's body and the evidence pointing to his killer were taken away together. This, of course, was not part of the perpetrator's plan, and thus a new dilemma arose. How could he be sure that neither Mr. Frost's body nor the evidence wouldn't be discovered someday? So back he comes 18 years later, sneaking in bright and early to try and cover his tracks. Well, Mr. Gusto, are you finally ready to admit it? That you are the one responsible for the IS-7 incident?
Mr. Gusto, it's all because of you that Samson...
Gusto. So I finally got caught, huh? All these years later. Nobody came close back then, not even the big shot prosecutor or the attorney. That's some impressive work, Mr. Prosecutor. I have to hand it to you. You admitted then that you murdered Artie Frost? Sure I do. I did it. I killed him. But he only had himself to blame. What do you mean by that? He agreed to help me. We were supposed to help each other so that one of us could win. And whoever won was supposed to let the other use the cookbook. But on the day of the final, the rat finally showed its true colors. Seriously, Frost, we had a deal. Sorry, I'm not helping you in the final. Our little agreement is over, Gusto. But I helped you. I spent all day yesterday making the eyes for your pieces. Did you? And you can prove that, I suppose. What do you... Wait. You were planning to betray me right from the start, weren't you? After Frost double-crossed me, I had to make my piece for the final by myself. And like you said, my son wasn't there, so I didn't have any help with the flavor either. So much for the pride you claim to have in your ability to make delicious desserts. Go ahead and judge. You have no idea what it was like for someone like me to lose my sense of taste. I gave up everything to become the best. Everything. I take pride in that. Something someone like you could never understand. You're right. I don't understand. Do you take pride in the fact that you resorted to murder? Or that you abandoned your son? Why would I want to understand someone who could do such things? A man can't afford to rely on other people. I learned that the hard way 18 years ago. My son never showed up on the day of the final. And in hindsight, I wouldn't be surprised if Frost was the reason why.
Why would you think that? What exactly happened to your son?
How am I supposed to know? I told you. He's none of my concern anymore. And according to you guys, nobody knows where he is now either.
And you don't care? You're horrible!
So with his disappearance, so too went your chances of winning, correct? Yeah, I had to find another way of getting my hands on that book. That's when inspiration struck. I decided to skip afternoon tea and snuck into Tangaroa's room. It should have been so easy. All I had to do was photograph the formulas I needed and get out of there. But then Frost showed up. Oh, so that worked out as I thought it might do. I thought I might find you here. Stealing recipes from the famous cookbook, huh? Frost! What's this? A cure for taste disorders? Oh no, that's just too tragic. A confectioner who can't taste anything. What will people say? If you tell anybody, I'll... Ah! You're what? You can't even hit me, you miserable worm. Why, you... Frost shoved me hard when I went to punch him, knocked me clean off my feet. I crashed into one of the lamps. Must have been when my blood got on it.
So Mr. Frost wasn't the first to get hurt?
When it was all over, I realized I had to get rid of that blood somehow, so I scraped off all the bloody bits. I dissolved those salt shavings in some flavored ice mixture and brushed it all over the harp. And that's how you made the evidence linking you to the murder vanish. Frost was going to blackmail me. He would have made me give him money to keep quiet about my condition. So you decided you had to kill him? Yeah, I guess I did. Why would I let him live? Would you want someone holding something like that over your head? Besides, he's the one who drew first blood. Makes for a solid case of self-defense, don't you think?
So that was the impetus behind it all.
Anyway, I initially took the lamp to Frost's room. Went straight there once I figured out how I was going to hide the bloody part. Inspired by all the ice sculpting tools lying about the place, I guess. You're not as dumb as you pretend to be. Yeah, figured I could use them to chip it off and grind it up. Once that was done, painting the stuff all over the heart was easy.
But why, Samson? Why did you have to frame him?
I never meant for the cops to pin it on him. That was your fault. You and the rest of them. Why do you think I went to the trouble of placing the lamps and cloths back in Scone's room? There's only one reason to plant the murder weapon in the room of another contestant, and that's to cast suspicion on that person.
What? You tried to frame me, Gusty Pants.
Yeah.
But why? Why poor old me?
I respected Tangaroa. He was the best. A true champion. I would never have wanted him to take the fall. But you're a fraud. Your work wasn't even real. You had no respect for our craft at all. You deserve to be punished for what you did.
Oh, Gusty, how could you?
And had you refrained from eating Tangaroa's work, Frost's body wouldn't have been found. My plan was to wait until Tangaroa was judging your room. That's when I sneaked the corpse into Frost's room and freeze it. But thanks to you, Bound here found it before I had a chance to retrieve it.
I don't understand. Why did you need to freeze his body at all?
Why indeed?
Mr. Edgeworth, surely you must know. Why did Mr. Gusto need to freeze Mr. Frost's body?
To pass it off as an ice sculpture, well, that's what happened anyway. To hide the true crime scene? Probably. To mess with time of death. Mr. Gusto needed to freeze Mr. Frost's body in order to obscure the time of death. If they determined that the murder occurred during afternoon tea, he would have been an obvious suspect. Bingo! Freezing Frost's body wasn't simple. Preparing everything took time. So I decided to put its body in the chest in Tangaroa's room while I got everything ready in Frost's. At the time, it seemed like the perfect hiding place. Never count on some gluttonous pharmacist showing up and making the whole ship collapse.
I still don't get it though. Why disguise the body as an ice sculpture at all?
The sooner it was found, the smaller the effect of freezing it would have had on masking the time of death. Therefore, he needed to disguise it, at least until it had fully frozen.
How awful! Using Mr. Frost's own work to help you cover up the truth behind his murder.
Ironically, Tangaroa would have been just fine if the body hadn't been found before I got out of his room. If only things had gone to plan, he wouldn't even have been arrested, let alone convicted.
You mean it was my fault? Everything that happened to Samson? It was all because I found the body.
Don't let him get inside your head, Judes. None of this is your fault. If it wasn't Samson, it would have been Delicia instead. She would have been the one they arrested. Either way, there's only one person to blame here, and that's Gusto. It didn't help that the initial detective was so bad at his job either. He never even told the prosecutor that the body had vanished. So then, Mr. Von Karma had unwittingly placed Mr. Tangaroa under arrest in the absence of a body. I mean, I guess it would explain why he was so keen to wrap things up. Still, you'd think he'd notice something as big as that if he'd taken a look at a few reports, right? Not if someone had been deliberately distorting the facts of the case, though. Either way, it seems that Mr. Von Karma didn't know about the body until after the arrest had been made. But admitting that would have spoiled his perfect record. So he kept it to himself and proceeded to prosecute Mr. Tangaroa regardless.
Can this really be true? You don't feel bad at all. Somebody spent 18 years in prison because of you.
Sticks and stones, girlie. Sticks and stones. What a jerk. I ought to arrest you right now, pal.
I'm afraid I can't allow you to do that, Detective.
So you noticed, huh? Glad somebody did. The judge is right. You can't lay a finger on me.
What? Why? You just confessed to murder.
No idea, huh? Then I guess I better lay it out for you. Why you can't arrest me? Because the statute of limitations. That's why. It sucks, but it's very much true. Now this looks like the final play, to be totally fair with you. This looks like the very end. Do I end an episode here and we move on to the next? Because who knows how long more testimony in the end could take. That's for sure, but really, this is the reason. Murder, 15 years from the day of the crime. The statute is suspended should the suspect flee to a foreign country. Wait a second. Ha ha! Ha ha! You may have not necessarily fled to a foreign country, but you definitely left to a foreign country. Oh no. We've solved what we're going to do. Before it's even started to come up. And that is Ace Attorney Investigations 2, Prosecutors Gambit. As we have probably one more episode because he's confessed after all. We're about to say, you dumb, you left the country. That doesn't apply. But that will be next time. I'll see you then for more. And until then, I say, bye-bye.